Welcome to session 3 of our series, Exhale. And in this session today, we will be exploring not necessarily a specific breath practice, but more of a way of practicing with our breath. And that is going to be in placement of awareness. And so I'll be going over that as we kind of get into our session today. And I invite you to begin in a shape lying on your back. And if your lower back feels tender or a little bit tight, it might be helpful to actually bend your knees and plant your feet on the floor. So we can start here. And you'll also need room up above you, like above your head. So to show you how much room you'll need, you will need to be able to reach your arms up and kind of put them in like a circle. So you'll need this much room around you. So you can adjust as needed. And then when you come down onto your back, it might feel welcome to pull your knees in toward your chest, maybe wrapping your hands around your knees. If your lower back feels like, I kind of need a moment to settle in, you might even rock from side to side. And then if and when you feel ready, perhaps you place your feet on your mat. Now, you could just leave your feet wherever they lay. And a second option is to take your feet and touch the right and left side edges of your mat. And then allow your knees to fall in toward one another. And then allow your knees to fall in toward one another and notice how that feels. Here you might notice that your hips don't have to really do so much work to like hold your legs in a certain position. And you could maybe allow these hip muscles to soften because your knees are just allowing gravity to take over and fall in toward one another. So this is called our constructive rest pose. So coming into this shape, starting to soften into this moment, noticing the floor beneath you. If it feels better to have your legs extended, that is also an option. So you choose what's going to be best for your body. And we'll take about 3 more breaths here, just settling in. Feeling your breath move in and out at your own natural pace. And with these last 1 or 2 breaths, you might start to notice where your breath is traveling. So you might notice that as you breathe in, your chest or your abdomen, maybe your ribs, move with your inhales and your exhales. And as you are connected with your breath now in awareness, I invite you to begin adding some movement into your body. Perhaps starting with your arms, starting with your hands. Option 2, inhale and reach your arms up towards the sky, and then back to the floor, back behind you, resting them on the floor for just a moment. Just for 1 breath. Maybe even taking a stretch through the arms, option to roll through the wrists. And then if you'd like, you could continue moving one breath per movement. So inhaling here. And exhaling, option 2, float the arms down back to your sides. Continuing for a few more rounds, inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Option to change your direction, maybe sweeping in a big circle, inhaling up. Exhaling down. One more. And the next time your hands are down by your hips, you might rest them. And shifting your feet so that your feet are hip distance apart. We'll begin to explore some movement through the spine, and there's a couple options here. So I'm going to place my feet hip distance apart, and they are kind of underneath my knees, but maybe a little bit further out. And you can adjust your feet as needed once we come into the shape. And here, I'm going to bring some awareness into my tailbone. So you can start to notice your hips, your tailbone, and that whole lower portion of your spine. Maybe even starting to kind of rock your hips a little bit. And then if you want, you could start to peel your tailbone off of the floor, pressing your feet into the mat and peeling your spine up and away, kind of like you're peeling a Band-Aid off. And then the same way that you came up, you could peel right back down, allowing your tailbone to come down last. So this is option 1, inhaling, pressing your feet into the floor, peeling your tailbone and your spine off the mat. Maybe you move one vertebrae at a time. The second option is to move like an elevator. So you could press your feet into your mat, inhale, and just lift in one fluid motion, and lower right back down. So you choose. Do you want to move one vertebrae at a time? Do you want to move the spine in one motion? There is no wrong choice. You can always try both and see which one you prefer. And when we're here moving in this way, because we are moving a lot of our weight up into our shoulders and our neck, it's really important for safety that you do not turn your neck or head in either direction when the weight is on your shoulders and your neck, when your hips are lifted up. So you can do whatever you want to do with your body, but just a little safety measure, a little heads up. It might not feel comfortable for your neck to move it when there's weight on it. All right, let's take a couple more. And this time we can add on. So if you want, settling the hips back down into the floor, you can continue that movement that we were just doing, or if you'd like to layer onto it, still staying connected with your breath. When you reach up, when you inhale, you could move like an elevator this time if you want to add this second part in. You could also move with peeling your spine up, but it might not be as easy. So when you lift up, you could lift up one leg. So you could keep your lifted leg bent, or you could float it straight up towards the ceiling and then lower the hips back down, lower the foot down. Inhale, press into your right foot, lift your left leg, and then lower down. Couple more. Inhale, lift. Whether you're floating your leg or not, You can come into whatever lift you want. All right, let's take a couple more each side. Stay with your breath. Inhale, lift. Exhale, soften. All right, last one. And if you're ready to release, you get settle back down into the mat. Maybe shift your knees and your hips from side to side. Option to roll the knees in toward the chest like we did at the beginning. Maybe wrapping your hands around your knees and rocking. And then option to return back into our constructive rest shape. We're going to revisit that shape one more time, but this time with a prop. So if you have a bolster or a block, you can kind of pull that toward you. And you don't have to use a bolster or a block here, but if you know that you might need it or you might want it, then you can have it nearby so that you don't have to go reaching for it. So we'll start to, before we get into this bridge pose again that we just did, we'll take one more preparatory shape and then we'll come into it. So you can kind of just leave your block or your bolster where it is. We'll need it in a second. And staying connected with your breath, you could begin to pull the knees in toward your chest, but this time you might place your hands behind your knees and then allow the arms to float outward so that you still have connection with your legs, but the arms are extended. Starting to come into your inhales and your exhales. If you've lost it, it's easy to forget about our breath. I know that I have to come back again and again. And we're going to be traveling our breath with our movement, traveling our awareness and our breath at the same time. So with an inhale, you could begin to float the legs up towards the sky. Maybe you keep your hands connected to your legs and then exhale, float them back down. You don't have to completely straighten your legs as you inhale and breathe them up again. If your legs are still bent, that's totally okay. Or if you prefer to just do one leg at a time, you might explore that. But can you stay with the awareness of your breath? And this time, as you breathe in and you reach your legs up, can you breathe into the backs of your legs where you're feeling the stretch? Like your breath can travel into your body and breathe directly into the area of your legs that is receiving this stretch. Let's take 3 more. Last one. With your last one, you might release the feet back down to the floor and just pause here for a minute. If you want, you can come back into constructive rest pose with your knees falling in toward one another. Noticing any change in your body just from moving so far. Last breath here. I invite you for this remainder of class to use our community intention, which is my awareness travels with my breath. My awareness travels with my breath. Moving into this next shape, if you'd like to use a block or a bolster, we'll come into our last version of our bridge pose. And so what that looks like with your block or your bolster is you could press your feet into the earth and slide your block underneath so that you're in bridge pose, but you don't have to hold yourself up so much. And it really doesn't matter which one you use. It's totally up to you. But just as a precaution for health and safety, try to avoid your tailbone. So if you notice that the block is pressing right up on your tailbone, you might move it up a little bit so that it's more on the broader side of your lower back. All right, option one is to just stay here. This is a good place to be. If this is where your body is receiving today, then you can stay in this spot. If you'd like, you could leave your left foot where it is, and this is option two, and then allow your right foot to cross over your left knee, coming into a figure four. This is a version of like bridge pose and pigeon pose kind of meshed together. And then if you are open to it, you could shift your weight into your right shoulder and tuck your left shoulder back, and then shift your weight into the left and tuck your right shoulder back, so that now your shoulders are lifting you up and holding you up. If there's any part of this that is just not feeling welcome, you might try to just return back to center, maybe do less if your body's asking you to do less, or if all of this is feeling welcome, we'll continue to be here for the next 5 breaths in and out. And using your intention of my awareness travels with my breath, can you notice your next inhale, breathing in through your nose? And this time, travel your breath down into your right hip. Almost like there's a little set of lungs in your right hip. Like you could breathe directly there. What does that feel like to inhale and your inhale go directly into your right hip? And when you exhale, your breath rebounds back out. About 3 more breaths. And if having this traveling of your breath just isn't kind of clicking, that's okay. You might just simply allow your awareness to rest on your right hip as you breathe in and out. For our last breath here. If you're ready to unravel your right leg, give it a stretch out. And place it back down on the floor. And then swap it out for your left ankle, your left foot. if you want to take the figure 4 with your legs, and if not, you can forego that. Just hang out in bridge pose. We'll be here for the next 5 breaths. This time, shifting your awareness into your left hip. If it's helpful, as you have your awareness in your left hip, also having your awareness in your breath. And noticing, does this create a sense of spaciousness or ease? Or is this kind of weird and maybe a little confusing, like, I'm not really sure what's happening here. That's okay. If this creates more mental tension than it is a help, you can release. And just allow yourself to be in the pose, be in the shape in a way that feels right to you. As we take our final breath. And if you're ready to release, you could unravel your left leg, press your feet into the floor to lift your hips and remove any propping underneath you, and settle back down into the mat. Just pausing here for a good 4 or 5 breaths. Allowing your spine to soften, rebound after being in that big back opening shape. Last couple breaths. And as you breathe in, can you watch your inhale moving through your nose, travel down your esophagus, into your lungs, and then notice how your abdomen responds. What part of your chest or your stomach or your ribs moves the most? Last breath. This awareness that you had just now with watching your breath move in and noticing which of your abdomen moved the most, that is the awareness we're taking with us into each shape. And that same breath that moved into your abdomen, whether it be your stomach or your chest or your ribs or even your shoulders, you can send that same breath down into other areas of your body. If you'd like to stretch your legs out, maybe take a full body stretch, opting to reach the arms up overhead. Option to pull the knees in toward the chest. And just roll back and forth if you want to, or stay at stillness. And in your own timing, you might begin to roll on over to your stomach. And just pause here for a couple breaths as we are completely changing our position and shape. And you could stay here in prone, which is just to lie on your stomach, or if you want, you could press yourself back and find a child's pose. One more breath in and out. If you'd like to stay here in child's pose or lying on your stomach, you can for as long as you want. Or if you're ready to shift yourself up, finding a tabletop, I'll meet you here. And if you want to take a few organic movements, you could kind of move into your body. Just feeling the effects of the shapes that we just opened our class with. Option 1 is to stay here in either child's pose or tabletop, taking some organic movement. Another option is to tuck your toes, lift your hips, and find a downward facing dog. Maybe taking some organic movement here from this shape. For about 2 more breaths, 3 more breaths. Last breath. And from your down dog or your tabletop. So if you are in child's pose and you're ready to move on to the next shape, you might shift yourself forward into a tabletop. And so whether you are in tabletop or down dog, I invite you to extend your left leg and draw your left knee forward, planting it towards the front of your mat. And here we're going to come into a warrior 2. So your back foot, your right foot, can pivot so that your right heel comes to the floor. And I like to bring my foot in at an angle. So you could blade your right foot so that it runs parallel with the back portion of your mat, or you could allow your right toes to kind of blade inward. And having your left foot point toward the front of your mat. When you're ready to come up, you could inhale and windmill your arms up, coming into warrior 2. So your left knee is bent, your right leg is strong and straight. We're taking some time here, feeling your way into it. If you want, you could bend into your knee and then reach on up, finding some space. Noticing what's going on in your right hip here. Can you, with your next inhale, bring some awareness into your right hip? And inhale, send a breath right there. Option to find stillness in your warrior 2. You could stay right here, or you could bring your right hand to the back of your right leg, flip your left palm, inhale, and exhale. Reach back for a reverse warrior. And then come right back to center. All right. If you're ready to move on, you could extend through both legs and turn your toes so that they're both pointed forward. And we'll take a nice forward fold. Here, it might be helpful to have your blocks if you want them. You can just place them right in front of you. And when you're ready, we could inhale and sweep the arms up. And as you exhale, option to start to bend forward. Maybe you bring your hands down toward your blocks and stay at this like halfway lift position. Or if it feels welcome to your body, you could start to curve into your spine, maybe foregoing the blocks if that's easier for you. As we take a full forward fold. You could stay here at center, or if you want, you could inhale for a halfway lift. And then exhale, walk your hands over toward your right or left side. It doesn't matter which one. We'll do the other side here in a minute. So you could stay at center or take this side stretch, bring some awareness into your open side. So if you're feeling like the left ribs are open or the right, whichever side it is, can you take a conscious breath in? Like you can breathe directly into that lung, the open side. Can you breathe in and expand your lung open? Notice what that does to your stretch in your body. Last breath here. If you're ready to come back to center, you could walk your hands back and then walk your hands over to the opposite side if you took that lateral side stretch previously. Same thing here. Can you bring some awareness to the open side of your body where you are feeling the sensation of the stretch? Notice that area. And then breathe in, sending your breath into the stretch, into your lung. Last 1 or 2 breaths here. Starting to find completion. You might start to walk your hands back. Option here to bend into your knees to kind of give your legs a little bit of a break for a second, because we're going to be coming into Warrior 2 on the other side. Okay, when you're ready, we could pivot our right foot to the top of the mat, bend into the right knee, and inhale. Rise into Warrior 2. Take a minute, adjust your stance. If your stance is kind of funky from being in that previous pose, so you could allow your left leg to be strong and long, plugging your left heel down into the mat. Maybe even pivoting your left toes inward a little bit as your right knee lunges forward. Option to extend your arms out into a T. Maybe you look over your right hand. Whether you are in stillness or whether you are moving in and out, we'll take another 2 breaths here. Next time you end up in a lunge, option to place the left hand on the left leg, flip the right palm up, breathe in, and exhale. Open up for a reverse warrior if you want to take it, because you could stay in our previous warrior that we were just in. And we'll bring it back forward. Lengthen through the legs, relax the hands, and pivot our feet forward. This time, instead of taking our forward fold, we have an opportunity to explore Goddess. So with our heels inward, you could adjust it so that your toes point outward. And bringing your hands to your hips, you can kind of feel and move into your hips. Maybe you start bending your knees a little bit, and then maybe bend both knees at the same time, starting to feel your way into your Goddess. You could also place your hands on your quads, whatever you prefer. And if you want to find stillness here, you might begin to find center, maybe even reaching your arms up overhead. Option to exhale and open up, kind of like cactus arms, but instead of straight forward, you might allow the palms to kind of face each other. And you could continue to move in and out of it, or find stillness here and breathe in and out of this shape for just 2 more breaths. You can do it. Stay with your breath here. Last one. Stay for the exhale if you can, and then release. Great. We can start to pivot our feet towards the top of our mat. Bring our hands down to the floor, and you have some options. Option 1 is to shift back into a down dog. Option 2 is to find a child's pose. Option 3 is to do whatever you want. We'll be here for the next 5 breaths. You could even start in one and change your mind and choose the other, if that is what your body needs. Couple more breaths here. If you're ready for the next shape, you might begin to shift yourself forward and return to lowering yourself down on to your stomach. We'll be exploring a nice shoulder stretch to kind of complete what we started with all of our shoulder opening at the beginning of class and chest opening. And here we'll have another opportunity to breathe some awareness into specific areas of our bodies. There's 2 options. I'll show the first option here, lying on the stomach. And then there's a second option to come into a similar shape from child's pose. So, coming here into option 1, you could allow yourself to come up onto your elbows, and then extending your right arm out. We could take a breath in, and then as you exhale, you could needle through. Right palm turns up towards the sky. Needle the right arm down and in, and then settle back in on top of your right shoulder. Now, this can feel like a really big stretch. So if you want to be on your stomach, but this stretch is just like, whoa, that's a bit much, you could take a blanket and place it on your right side. And then when you come into the stretch, instead of bringing your right shoulder all the way down to the floor, you could use the blanket to bring the floor to you. And that will prevent you from going so deep into it that it might be a bit much for where your body is today. So that's one option. And then the second option to come into this from child's pose is to have your knees a little bit wider than hip distance, toes touching back behind you. And then you could have your hands planted on the floor. Same thing, we'll open up the right arm here, palm face up, needle it through, and then bring the right shoulder down to the mat or thereabouts. Maybe your left arm reaches out long for stability. You could turn your gaze to look at your right hand, or you could leave your forehead resting on the mat. So lots of choices here depending on what is going to serve your body most in this moment. And we'll be here for the next, since that took a little while to explain, and we've already been here for a few minutes, we'll just be here for the next 7 or 8 breaths. We'll kind of make up for it on the other side. Can you search with your mind's eye and find in your body where you are experiencing the sensation of this shape? So where are you feeling the stretch? Where are you feeling the opening? Allow your mind to focus in that area. And then with your next inhale, can you allow your breath to travel to that area? My awareness travels with my breath. Last couple breaths here. If you're ready for the next side, you might begin to unravel. If you're in child's pose and your left hand is reached out long, you could drag your left hand back toward you, press into your left hand wherever you are, and just unravel. Maybe move into your right arm, your right shoulder. And then we'll find it on the other side. So reaching the left arm out long. And as you exhale, you could start to needle your left arm underneath you, palm face up. Maybe you use the blanket here underneath your left shoulder if you are lying on your stomach, or you could forego it if that's what you prefer. And we'll settle in here for about 10 breaths total, seeing as we got into this side a bit quicker. How's your breath here? How is it moving? Where is it traveling? About 3 or 4 more breaths here. Last breath. In your own timing, you could begin to make your way out of this shape. Maybe stretching through your left arm. And then we'll start to roll over onto our stomachs. And just taking a pause here for a second. Back into where we started. If your lower back feels a little bit off center, you could allow your knees to come in toward your chest. Kind of rock from side to side, allow your lower back to release. And then option 2, plant your feet on the floor, taking your feet out to the left and right side of edges of your mat. So the feet are nice and wide. And then, like we windshield wiper our knees, you could kind of float them over to one side and then the other. Only going as far as you are comfortable going. And then the next time that your knees point over to the right, option to pause here if you want to find stillness, or if you'd like to keep going in this like dynamic movement like windshield wipers, you can do that too. But pausing here, you might notice how your left hip feels, how the muscles on the left side of your left hip feel. An option to place your right foot on top of your left knee. Tuning in, checking in, how does that feel? Does it feel pinchy? Does it feel painful? If so, you might remove the right leg. But if this feels welcome, if you are enjoying this sensation, then you might stay here for the next 4 or 5 breaths. In your own timing, you could find your way over to the other side. And just remembering that you might stack your ankle on top, you might not. Your choice. Last breath here. Or you could always choose to stay longer. If you are ready to release, you might begin to set up for Shavasana, our final time of rest. You might stay right here, just resting on your back, or you could lie on your stomach, on your side. You could also use props here. If it feels supportive for your lower back, you might take a bolster or a blanket and place it underneath your knees if you're lying on your back. And this just helps your lower back feel a little bit more supported. There's not so much tension there. And if lying down is absolutely not an option for you today, you could always choose to come into any seated shape that feels welcome, maybe resting your back against the wall. As we'll be here for the next 2 minutes, but just know that you can always stay longer. And I'll be quiet now for the rest of this time. But just know that I'm here. You can continue to stay here as long as you like. There's no need to rush away. If you feel like your body is still receiving the benefits of this time of rest. You can choose for yourself when you are ready to move out, whether it be in 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whenever. I thank you for allowing me to guide you in this class today. My hope for you is that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.